Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night.
Yes, and I feel an internal sense of dread bubbling up as I wait for Biden to completely drop the ball.
President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power.
I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all.
Respected my ass. She taught at Notre Dame.
Even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know.
Then stop pretending that the American people want this. If you want to be corrupt, but don't pretend to be good.
And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it.
But the Republicans set the precedent, so it doesn't really matter what the Democrats thought in the past now, does it?
They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election. So
if you want to go by who's currently in power, do that. If you want to go by the will of the people, clearly the upcoming election is a better reflection of what the people want than what happened 4 years ago, is it not? Choose one.
They were stopped.
Nice. So they were stopped. Not that we stopped you for purely political reasons. They just were stopped. Who knows by whom?
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election.
All right. There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions.
If you count old people, there almost certainly are.
As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say.
Right, we've gone over this already. Skip. Boy, Trump is so fat.
People, you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very happy with.
That's simply not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist.
All right, everybody, take a drink.
What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
They didn't elect you because of that. The people want Medicare for all. They elected you because they thought you could win against Trump. This has proven to be false based on your results in this debate.
Not what you've said,
But
and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party wants
simple.
to go socialist.
Take a shot, boys.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. The 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived?
God, he's not coked up enough. Please, give him more Adderall.
Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act. And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military.
307,000 people in the enrollment system for the VA had already died, but nowhere does that prove that Biden did anything wrong or that they died from lack of health care.
And if you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't be
the deal.
200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw.
Not as late as 3 months late since the time you learned about the coronavirus and the time that you denied that it even existed.
All right, gentlemen,
Which was heavily
Mr. President,
you would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President,
You're talking about 2 million people.
You're
Mr.
not gonna be able to
President, as
shut
a
him up.
moderator,
Chris Wallace did an admirable job trying to stop Trump from trampling all over Biden, but in the end of the day, you have to have a mute button.
The president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court.
Trump making a semantic argument. Oh, technically it's not in the ballot.
You don't know her view on Roe v. Wade. You don't know her view.
But we kind of do, don't we? Alright, Joe Biden won this segment. Polls show that most Americans prefer that the Supreme Court seat not be filled until after the next election. Biden could have mentioned that, but Trump ultimately is the one who failed to demonstrate why his side is correct.
the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan.
I got rid of the individual mandate.
You're
That was the
debating him,
worst
not
part of
me.
it.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare. And just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices.
No, he hasn't.
Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%.
Hasn't happened yet.
You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it.
Maybe because your party has been blocking a universal health care plan since the 1920s? Fact is, healthcare costs have gone up under Trump.
That you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
well with health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid.
But for some reason, you can be living in poverty but still too rich to be provided Medicaid.
Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option.
Yay!
Number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie
Number-
Sanders, who's
I
far
did-
left, on the manifesto,
When
we
you-
call it.
when
And that
manifest-
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, the fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar. I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that.
The
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let him.
Disavowing it.
There is no manifesto number.
Socialized
He is not for any help for people needing health care because
Bernie?
because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession.
Maybe we should do something about that fact, that we're relying on the oppressive owner class to give us health insurance.
There are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give them better health care at a much lower price because
and by
Obamacare
the way, he doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a plan.
fixed it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as
single
you might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Right, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate.
Yeah, the thing that's supposed to take money away from the individual idiots to fund the people who are actually smart enough to sign up.
We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual
true.
mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, that they shouldn't even call it Obamacare.
You think Obama came up with the name?
The problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
The healthcare industry is even more expensive, except instead of taxes paying it, the people have to pay for it themselves.
Premiums are too high.
Because the Republicans block the government from negotiating drug prices with the drug companies.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. The
Radical
question,
left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it.
Nice.
We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal.
200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, we were insisting that the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
Well done, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault.
Biden, you need to press Trump on the fact that he refuses to take responsibility for the crisis.
And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic.
You are, but Biden never said that.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives.
Conveniently ignoring everything else Dr. Fauci said.
Many of your Democrat governors said,
I don't care what they said. Skip.
we got the gowns, we got the masks, we made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators.
I love how Trump somehow thinks he knows what Biden would and would not have done, even while he completely ignores the fact that a lot of hospitals are still missing PPE.
And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick.
Hashtag misleading statistic.
And that's because of the fake news. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no
very-
economic
Let- let-
recession. We didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table?
Appeal to emotion. It might work, but not on me.
His own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up, he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers, just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner.
So you ignored your scientists and trusted the companies.
It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives.
So you're
left, I don't know
suggesting
what
that
I
the
call it.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slaoui...
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. It could also
I'm
be
talking
after
about when it's
that.
generally available, not when it
Well,
will
we're
be.
going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This
delivering
is the
vaccine.
same man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That
same
was
man.
said sarcastically,
That was
you
him.
know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will.
You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't,
Everybody
or
knows.
Senator
And
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the scientists.
No, you can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market, one of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Could have poked that stock market bruise a little more, couldn't you?
Did you use the word smart?
I'm Donald Trump, and I'm a very stable genius.
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country.
Close, but not quite.
And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
and it's
We're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segments. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide
that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. And, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second.
Nice.
He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot.
Biden, you need to press down on Trump and tell him that just because young people aren't dying, they're still infecting older people.
But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election.
Lies.
Those states are not doing well that are shut down.
Almost as if having more COVID causes you to shut down instead of the other way around.
Respond to that.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer, questioning
I think
the
masks
efficacy
are okay.
of
You have
masks.
to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the
matters.
opposite. They've also said the opposite.
No serious person said the opposite.
The USPS had a plan to distribute 5 masks to every American household in the US, and Trump actively went in to stop it. If you had just mentioned that, you would have won the debate.
They've
No
also said, well, look
serious
at
person.
Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the
He
opposite.
did not
I want
say
to
the
ask you, we
opposite.
got a
Said
little
very
bit more than a
strongly,
minute left in this
masks
segment.
are not good.
More proof he doesn't trust scientists. Biden, say
Then he
it.
changed his mind. He said masks good.
I
I'm
wanna
okay
add-
with masks.
President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people.
Outside.
Outside, yes, sir. Agreed.
What? Plenty of them were inside.
Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
Because nobody will show up.
Oof.
people with.
Well, it's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
I've
not
done
worried
a great
about it
job
spreading
as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you
for
not worried
hangars,
about
and we
the
have a
disease
lot of
issues,
people.
sir?
Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever.
Yet there seems to always be an outbreak every couple days after you host an event, bragging like his crowd size matters.
That's what he said. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing on one another.
We've had no
or
negative
cheek to
effect.
jowl.
Damn, Joe, you really screwed up this potential zinger.
He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody can.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
Joe Biden won this segment again. Again, it's hard to defend against the truth. And when you're talking about your crowd sizes, that's really not a good look.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy?
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong.
Lies. Biden does support shutting down the economy.
And again, 2 million people would be dead now.
Yeah, if you did literally nothing. But under Biden, maybe 100,000 would be dead at most.
Instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before.
Nobody's seen this kind of situation before ever, so it's kind of a given.
And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison.
Because going out, breathing on people, and in effect killing them, I prefer to put you in prison than that.
And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
This is a very convincing argument. It's also almost completely wrong. But as you'll see, Biden does a piss-poor job refuting it.
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax
Sleepy Joe.
proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's
It's
his
the wrong state.
Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
He's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right.
Biden failed to clarify that the cities that are run by Democrats are also very densely populated, which is why they have had to shut down. He also didn't talk about how the reason our economy is doing so well right now is because all the big corporations got bailouts from the government. $1 trillion a day was spent on all those big companies while the common man was completely forgotten. You must repeat to the viewers these exact words. The reason the stock market is doing so well is because Trump is throwing the lives of the working class people into the fire to feed the machine of the economy and keep the stock market prices going up so that the rich can benefit. You must say that explicitly. Bernie Sanders, right here in this situation, would have made it clear to everybody that was watching. But you are bought and paid for by the same corporate machine that funds Trump, which is why you are too afraid to stand up to them.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants.
This is easily refuted. More Americans are worrying about opening up too early rather than too late. Biden, you have to get on that.
By the way, I brought back Big Ten football.
Yes! Football is back. I win the debate.
As you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years.
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid $38 million one year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good.
Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars,
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it.
All right, Biden, I know you're no Bernie, but again, let me stress to you how important it is. You don't just say, release your tax returns and when. You have to say, if that's true, prove it by releasing your tax returns. And you have to point out how convenient it is that he won't release his tax returns until after the election.
It was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax.
Why not? You're a billionaire. You've got money to spend. Biden, why don't you call him out on this?
Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Free ad time.
You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher. He says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code.
Not only that, he literally just lied to the IRS. Are you not going to mention that?
That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts.
Yeah, that just sounds really bad unless you clarify what you're saying when you're eliminating tax cuts. You have to say explicitly, as Bernie Sanders does, tax the rich. The rich.
And make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe.
Because he was president and you weren't. Tell him. Say it.
We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including
Gentlemen,
fixing the broken military that you gave me.
At this point, Bernie Sanders would talk about how we've bloated the military budget far beyond what anybody could reasonably ask for, and how we're still in the Middle East carrying on those pointless wars. Except Joe Biden is a war hawk, so he won't point that out.
Including taking care of your vets.
Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. My economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make the federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But
in
respectfully,
America.
sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%.
What the fuck does that mean? You have to put things in perspective. You have to talk about how supply side economics, where you lower taxes, does not work. Your economic plan is taxing the rich and not the poor or middle class. And you have to talk about how in the 1970s, the golden age of economic expansion, the top marginal tax rate was 90%. You have to mention how there's wage slaves who are working 2 jobs and still unable to pay for their food and shelter. And you have to mention that we could solve poverty by just taxing the rich more.
You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500, who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
You have to specify that you are going to close the tax loopholes. You have to specify that redistributing wealth to the middle class and the poor will actually drive more economic expansion because those are the people who actually make better use of their money. You have to specify that you're going to give everybody a living wage because being alive is a right. You cannot simply state that you want to raise taxes and increase spending because when the American people hear that, they think big government and they think bad.
Why didn't you do it
Billions
before
of
when
dollars.
you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was
Right.
your
I got
tax
it.
proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
you got it done.
Our economy boomed
And,
like it's never boomed
the economy.
before.
You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
Make it clear, you're not raising taxes on the middle class.
It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929.
Biden, you've got to fact check.
It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot.
And yet you're taking credit for the jobs returning after COVID?
But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks.
First of all, the stock market does not help create jobs. In fact, it's only an indicator, basically, of how well the rich are doing. And the top 10% richest Americans own over 85% of all stocks. Joe, you need to be prepared to rattle off these facts.
If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look,
Joe, you need to refute that argument. It's been demonstrated time and again that the American market is so profitable that raising taxes does not drive companies away that wouldn't already have gone overseas to China anyway.
we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
he
booming.
Blew it. He blew
it wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery
Sir, is it
since
fair to,
1929.
is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole.
You idiot. Talk about how the underemployment rate was high under Trump. Talk about the national debt. Do something.
Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs.
No, you didn't.
They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry.
All right, let him.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year.
He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before.
That's not actually true.
We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
Your lunch, down 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. $2.5 million.
God, you can't be shutting down now. The Adderall is wearing off, isn't it?
Mr.
Look,
President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
Yes, he did, but you weren't involved with it, and that's what matters. Forget him. Just defend yourself.
He did.
Mr.
The only
President,
guy that
let
did
him
some-
answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
The media?
By everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they refuse to
allies,
talk
by the
about it
World
because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
Come on, Joe. All you need to do is say the words conspiracy theory.
well, I'll give you the list of the
fire
people who
them.
testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a
Some
good
because-
job.
This could have landed it if he had a little bit of a lot more energy.
Some people don't
Well,
do a good
here's
job.
the-
With you,
Go
they
ahead.
say
You get
that.
the wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Yes.
Excuse me. This
No.
No. Mr. President.
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President,
Joe.
That is simply
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million
It
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
my
already.
family.
This is not
Mr.
about
President.
my
Coming and
family or
helping
his
us with
family. It's
government.
about your family,
They
the
didn't collect
American people.
$3.5 million
He
for
doesn't.
nothing.
That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you.
What? Why are you giving up this chance? You could talk about Trump's family all day, as you mentioned. You could talk about the consulting fees used as a tax write-off for Ivanka Trump. You could talk about how Jared Kushner is being hired to do jobs that he's not qualified to do. You could talk about so much of this. And yet you chose to move away from this? Are you stupid? Yes, you are. Trump won this segment easily. In fact, I think Biden just lost it for himself. He did so fucking bad. He could have crushed Trump on this issue, but instead he just dropped in and let Trump roll right over him.
is why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution.
What the fuck does the Constitution have to do with any of this?
And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people looked like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides.
He does a lot better when Trump isn't interrupting. Perhaps that's why Trump is interrupting so often.
No president has ever
Finish
said
the
anything
statement.
like that.
Finish.
We've had plenty of racist presidents.
When Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
I really expected he'd go the completionist route by mentioning brown people and Asians, but I'm glad he didn't.
He did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, a super predator.
No, Hillary Clinton said that.
And they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir. It's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community. You have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country.
Yeah, but it's not like you didn't continue the drug war started by the crime bill.
You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump.
The Portland sheriff said, I have not supported Trump and I never
I don't
will.
think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour.
Not only is that an impediment to our free speech, you coming in and invading would have made things worse. In fact, it did. They're protesting too many police, and your solution is to send in more law enforcement?
But they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. Radical left. Law and order.
Why does he keep saying that? He seems to think that it's intrinsically a good thing when in fact the Nazis were also very law and order.
And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of a town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
and you
is
say
not
peaceful protest?
President
No,
Trump,
it's
I'm not
not,
asking.
but you say it is.
93% of all the protests are peaceful. You gotta hit them with that fact.
This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody
what
else.
Is radical,
and he would know.
What is
it's
radical
totally
about
racist.
racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person,
He's talking about
who had
white people.
no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas.
Are you ever going to actually say anything?
And really, they were teaching people to hate our country.
Haha, I fucking wish.
And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country.
Aha, patriotic education, like what the Nazis
They
did.
were teaching people that our country is a horrible place.
'Cause it fucking is.
It's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this
don't
than he
know.
does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. We're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do.
The Democrats that run these cities
ridiculous.
don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
violent
Are you in
crime.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
Are you in favor of law and order? Go
yes,
ahead,
I'm
say
in
it.
favor.
You
Everybody's
asked a
in favor
question,
of
let him finish.
Law and
He'll
order.
lose his
Law
left.
and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly.
You have to mention how he's not actually for law and order. Trump is an agent of chaos. He just uses the law and order baton to beat people into submission, Judge Dredd style.
And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's
and
exactly
states.
my question.
Democratic-
There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, and he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters, and once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've
He
never
wouldn't
seen
know
before.
a suburb unless he took a wrong turn. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore.
You sure about
Suburbs
that?
are by and large integrated.
What?
What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
What does reimagining policing mean? And do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance.
Nice.
They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down.
Yeah, so less police. We defund the police, right?
We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down.
He has no law enforcement
That's not
support,
true.
almost
That's
nothing.
Look,
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time. Name one law enforcement group.
Biden actually does have the support of over 175 law enforcement officials, including the Madison, Wisconsin's police chief.
Have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now.
What a cop-out.
I made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people,
He's never
the
said
leader.
that.
Excuse me, sir. You had never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way.
Wrong move.
You know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that.
Fact check, she actually did say that.
That's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, every single solitary time.
And to
I have to mention how sending troops and secret police to invade his own country is part of that problem of gasoline on the fire, while he gets to use it as posturing for law and order.
I'd send in the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
But they
good.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
There is no comparison between Antifa and actual neo-fascists. Those people are actually bringing guns, looking for trouble, and trying to shoot people up. Antifa, most of them are unarmed, and they mostly stick to themselves.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do
specifically
that, but
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to
supremacists.
condemn?
White
Proud Boys.
supremacists and right-wing
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by, stand back and stand by.
Does this sound like a condemnation to you? Yeah, me neither.
But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a
the threat
left-wing
on
problem.
white
Go ahead, sir.
supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what
Oh, really?
his
It's an idea.
his
Okay.
FBI director
Gentlemen.
said. Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration.
You heard it here, folks. Antifa is bad. Overall, I think both sides were trying their best to lose this segment for themselves. Trump basically confirming he's a neo-Nazi and Biden continuing to use the id Paul card. But Biden didn't fuck himself over as much, and he started off pretty strong, so I'm going to give the slight edge to him.
There has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax.
Impeachment hoax? We could have impeached you twice a week, and all of those cases could have been legitimate reasons to
And you
impeach.
saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way,
Joe, why are you letting this point stand? Talk about the national debt or something.
rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess.
That's a lie.
And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill.
Actually, Mitch McConnell blocked them from filling those seats, and you're taking credit for doing what exactly? By being president at the right place at the right time? More bragging about judges, as if filling the seats by itself is a good thing, rather than actually filling in with good judges.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy.
Oh no, here comes the Russiagating. The most I'll grant you is that there's something really suspicious going on.
Why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word. Can
Because-
you add
No,
back
no,
He's
I'm
a
not
person
asking.
that's
That was a
not
rhetorical question.
Yes, please, more banter.
The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before.
National debt, national debt, national debt.
In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch.
To be fair, violence is a function of recessions, which we're in because of Trump. Yeah, it's his fault still.
And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son,
Oh,
the
God.
way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers.
Wonderful. You're trying to out-warhawk Trump.
My son,
I don't care about your son.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you
Look what you got yourself into now.
talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking
I don't know.
about
I don't know, Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah, you
Hunter
know
got
Bo.
thrown. Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
For
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use.
He was administratively discharged.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
Oh, you salvaged that into a relatable story. Nice. Now, why don't you pivot to Trump and Ukraine?
Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know,
All right, Biden's a little bit more energetic now, though he hasn't channeled it in the way that he usually does. In any case, I think Trump has the edge in this section because Trump's economic policies have gone largely uncontested, and Biden hasn't laid out a strong enough case that he would be much better in the social areas.
I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change? And what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally.
Because half the country's been shut down, you dipshit.
But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
Joe, you've got to mention that most of the forest land in California belongs to the federal government.
gotta have cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting
believe
for a lot of people.
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes.
This is the Republican way of saying, yes, I know humans caused it, but I'm going to downplay that part in favor of other
But
explanations.
I also think we have to do better management of our forests.
Sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car.
Not answering the question.
And you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased.
More cars is worse for the environment. Worse.
And I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars.
No, he actually cut tax incentives.
But what they've done in California is just crazy.
So he just didn't answer the
$2
question.
trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production.
That sounds pretty bad.
By 2035, not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. Here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal.
Lies about the Green New Deal, which Biden doesn't even support, but it's actually a really good idea.
And it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them.
I never said that at all.
He did say
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up a lot of things.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. But the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
Our economy, in fact, suffers $2 trillion in losses because of climate change so far every year. You have to stress the fact that short-term economic gains caused by deregulating will be more than offset by the negatives that will come in the future.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do.
Those countries all emit less per capita than we do.
We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal.
Biden doesn't even support the Green New Deal.
Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward.
True, but he actually misspoke when he said this.
We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you
We're going to
support
build
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support that?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Don't? The radical left.
Biden won this segment. Trump can't compete on the facts and the science, but Biden could have really done a lot better here. The fact he didn't probably means Trump's campaign is probably pretty happy.
Election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate.
Say it. He's trying to suppress the votes of the black and brown and poor people because he knows that's the only way he can win the election.
If, in fact, he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen.
Fat chance. I'll bet my left nut that after he loses, he's going to bring it to the Supreme Court and they're going to fix the election for him. Either that or he'll attempt a coup, and basically at that point the military will decide who the next president is.
There was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady.
What? We all thought you were a joke, and you kind of still are.
President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too, so don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country.
No, unsolicited ballots are only being sent to 9 states, and only one of them is remotely competitive. In addition, what difference does it make whether someone asked for it or not?
There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket.
'Cause you're trash.
They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
Yes, but you will be the fraudster.
The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months.
They only have until December 8th to turn in the results.
Because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. because what's happening is incredible. I read today where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated.
Invalidated doesn't mean fraudulent.
They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
But what
They
are you
throw
gonna
them
do
out
about it?
left
There
and
are
right. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country.
There is no.
This is not.
There is no.
This is not
evidence
going
of
to
that.
end well.
There is
Okay.
no
This
evidence
is
of that.
not going
Vice
to
President
end well.
Biden.
5 states
In fact,
have had
go ahead,
mail-in
sir.
ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by the time, by Election Day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because he knows
You're
of the
wrong.
outcome.
You're wrong.
The biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots,
gentlemen, I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system,
you
know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already
All
there's
right.
been
So now
fraud.
that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks.
Could be months.
Until we find out who the new president is. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully.
Again, Trump refuses to accept the results of the election. This is basically setting the stage for a bunch of scenarios, like election stealing, civil wars, armed conflicts, military coups, fascist dictatorships. Who knows?
Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes. They've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it.
He's obviously going to use the Supreme Court to rig his election before the results come in. You have to stress how he clearly doesn't care about democracy. You have to stress that he wants to pick Amy Coney Barrett, and Amy Coney Barrett will make the people's decision for them.
And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans.
True, but you won't be a president for what the actual people want.
And this guy,
I want to see an
fact,
honest ballot cut.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Whew, thank goodness. Who won this section? Trump had way too much uncontested time pushing his conspiracy theory about voter fraud. By the time Biden tried to fact check on him, it was just one man's word against the other, and the damage had already been done. Trump already did what he wanted to do by making sure the American people doubt the election even more than they already do. Based on the content of what they're saying, Biden is better in basically all areas. But Trump kept bulldozing and interrupting, and he broke through with the economy. Biden's team needs to demand that the next debate be held with moderators who have the ability to mute the microphones of whomever is speaking out of turn, and they need fact checkers fact-checking on the spot. This is crucially important unless we want to let Trump lie and yell his way to victory in the next two debates. No video this Saturday. I'm taking a break.
I'm and I approve this message.